Kia ora to the staff and students of Waimarie High. I'm here to pitch an idea for an integrated learning project. You may ask, what is an integrated learning project? Well, I'm your friendly social studies teacher, Kevin. An integrated learning project is when we're going to be mixing social studies and another subject. In this case, drama. I've got two colleagues, history teacher, Liam Foster is going to be joining us for this project, and Nicole Endacott, our beloved drama teacher, is also going to contribute. An integrated learning project is when we're going to pick a topic, in this case, the Springbok Tour of 1981, very controversial, and we're going to look at it from both a social studies and a drama perspective. So we're going to look at the historical aspects of it, but to help us fully understand, Nicole's going to be coming in from a drama angle, and she's going to be working with our akonga, our students. She's going to be working on various drama workshops. Towards the end of the project, probably in week 6, we're going to be having a performance where all the students are going to mix into groups of 3 or 4, and they're going to act out various scenes from that terrible time in 1981 in New Zealand during the Springbok Tour. The reason myself, Liam and Nicole have chosen the Springbok Tour is we believe it's in just a massive pivotal moment in New Zealand history. Now, for those that may not know too much about the Springbok Tour, I'm just going to give you a very brief overview before we go into other aspects of this project. In 1981, New Zealand was one of the few countries willing to play sport with South Africa. South Africa at the time had a white minority government and a system called apartheid, whereby essentially it was separate development for the minority white population and the majority black population. Now, South Africa is the rainbow nation today. It certainly wasn't in 1981. This tour was very controversial because there were various agreements around the world to not play sport with South Africa. In fact, in 1976, New Zealand hosted a tour of South Africa, and that so angered African nations, most of the African nations boycotted the 1976 Montreal Olympics in Canada. So New Zealand was very much an outlier in 1981 and willing to host a tour of the South African Springbok team.
I was pleased when it went ahead because my policy has always been no politics in sport. But at the same time, after consultation with my colleagues in Cabinet and Caucus, I put the case fairly and squarely to Cess Blasey and the Rugby Union that they should not proceed. I gave him no indication of a personal view.
Our integrated learning project is aimed at Year 9 and 10 students. So I think the perfect fit for it in Level 5 Social Sciences of the New Zealand curriculum is understand how systems of government in New Zealand operate and affect people's lives and how they compare with another system. I mean, this subject is absolutely perfect for that because we have the government of Robert Muldoon and then we have apartheid era South Africa. So we can compare and contrast race relations in New Zealand. We can compare and contrast the way that the New Zealand government was quite authoritarian in its response to the Springbok Tour. So I think it's going to absolutely fit with the New Zealand curriculum.
Thanks, Kevin. That's a great explanation of how this project will help explore the social studies curriculum. I'm Nicole, and I'm here to talk about how this project will fit in with the drama curriculum. So it's going to hit all 4 strands of the arts curriculum for drama, but mostly communicating and interpreting ideas and developing ideas within drama. So you're probably wondering, how can social studies and drama work together very well? Or maybe you're thinking, I'm trying to learn about history. I don't want to get up and perform in front of everybody. I'm shy or I'm anxious. Well, they're going to tie in together really well. So every week we'll just take a little step with drama based off of what you've learnt in class. So in class you're going to see some cool things from the Springbok Tour. You'll see some documentaries and some images from the time. And you'll take one of those images and you'll use your bodies to portray that to each other. So it won't be scary and it will be fun. So to help students access the drama curriculum, we're going to focus in on one convention, and that's freeze frame. So freeze frame is going to work with the Springbok Tour because it's going to take key representations of the tour from the time and allow students to isolate that and put it into their bodies and perform that to others. The end goal of our integrated project is to have students produce a performance. So they'll work in groups of 3 and they will create a series of freeze frames that are held together by slow motion and some dialogue. Students will also produce a statement of intention. So a way we've accommodated for students with diverse learning needs is that not all students will need to verbalise during the performance if they're unable to. They can instead write their dialogue down in their statement of intention, and that dialogue will be based on key players of the times. A cool part of this project will have Colin going out into the community and talking to whānau or other people about their involvement in the Springbok tour, and then bringing it into class and discussing it with each other. The written intention that is a part of the assessment will also have students reflecting on their work and how they interacted with people in their group work setting as well. Coming up next, we've got Liam giving a bit of a breakdown about what the 6 weeks will involve, talking about how place-based learning helps the project, and giving a bit of a breakdown about his whānau involvement in the Springbok tour.
So over the 6 weeks, the social studies aspects of it are broken into weekly units. So in the first week, we're going to be having an overview of what apartheid means. And we're also going to be looking at just a general overview of the protests. In the second week, we're going to cover each big protest. So that's going to be place-based. So we're going to be looking at Christchurch. We're going to be looking at the protests in Wellington. We're going to be looking at the protests at Eden Park. And we're also going to be looking at the protests in Hamilton. The third week is we're going to be looking at key people. So that's John Minto. We're going to be looking at Robert Muldoon. We're going to be learning about Steve Biko, Mandela, and Desmond Tutu. In the third week, we're going to be taking a very Māori-focused perspective, and we're going to look at how the Māori responded to the protests, with special focus on the Māori women's movement. In week 5, we're going to be looking at where the students go and interview family members or members of the community, where they go and ask people that were involved or maybe were around at the time. And in week 6, we're just going to be spending the majority of the time preparing for the performance. So students are going to be just doing a revision, and then eventually by the end of it, they're going to be performing in a way that they find appropriate.
Now, one of the great advantages of doing the 1981 Springbok tour and doing it in Ōtāutahi, Christchurch, is that we've got plenty of opportunity for place-based learning. I myself have come back to my primary school, where I was 9 at the time of the Springbok tour, and I'm getting plenty of ideas here. Now, one of the things that we're going to be doing is we'll be able to trace where the Springboks were in 1981. I'd like to get the kids to go and actually try and find out which hotel they stayed at. We're certainly going to be going to have a look at Lancaster Park and around there where there were anti-tour demonstrations. And Liam's going to be going a little bit more into place-based learning, but I just want to give a plug for a chap called Wally Panatito. He's in Wellington. He writes about place-based learning from a Māori perspective. And I also think that by using place-based learning, we'll be able to really assist Māori children and all children.
The importance of place-based learning for this subject in particular is that, as you can see, we're standing outside Lancaster Park, where you had protesters not only storming the field, but also engaging in acts of civil disobedience, like burning of the New Zealand flag and burning of the South African flag, to show this kind of defiance towards the attitudes of both governments. The importance of place-based learning is that you can actually have students come and observe places of history themselves, where they're not just looking in their textbooks, they're not just looking at a screen, where you can actually have students kind of being aware of the barbed wire that would have surrounded the park. My mother was old enough to actually be involved in the protests, and she felt obligated to get involved because she felt that she could make a difference internationally, and I know that the protest movement in New Zealand was acknowledged by such people as Desmond Tutu, and also when even Nelson Mandela acknowledged the importance of the New Zealand protests of the Springbok tour, in terms of showing that that the Black South Africans weren't alone. The Black South Africans weren't left they weren't being ignored. There was a kind of a great kind of international concern for the plight of Black South Africans all the way here in New Zealand, thousands of kilometres away.
Thanks very much, Liam Foster at Lancaster Park. Look, we're just going to do a final pitch for our integrated learning project. We're back at Waimarie High here, and the reason I think it's so important is so much great archival footage out there, and we're going to play out this project with a minute or so from Marita Mitu's Part 2. It's goodbye from me, and it's...
Ka kite anō, thanks for listening.
On September 12, 1980, the anniversary of Steve Biko's death, the New Zealand Rugby Football Union invited White South Africa to send the Springbok team to New Zealand.